What's going on, Lego tubers and biotubers alike? People who love to watch Lego Masters, we are here with another live after show. Last night, episode 2 of season 2 premiered. This is the explosion one. We had a similar one with season 1. But before I get started, I'm joined with, of course, Thrawn.
Hello.
And my roommates, Jake and Andrew.
What's up?
You guys saw Andrew on the last one. Jake actually has a rap group and a YouTube. I put a little text on the bottom of this screen here. Jcruraps. Check him out on YouTube and Instagram. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started just talking about this show. You know, after the last episode, no one was eliminated, so you know people were in the clear for a while. But then, as we saw, they ramped things up a bit. Now, a thing about exploding your Lego creations is it's definitely takes a lot more ingenuity and understanding of exactly how Legos break and how they explode. And I mean, there was a point where one of the groups, you know, had to rebuild their wall because you need those spaces in between for it to explode. So, I don't know. Overall, pretty great episode in general. What did you think, Thrawn?
I enjoyed it. It was I felt it was very similar to the same episode from season 1, but I liked that they added different methods of explosion. I thought that was cool. The like glitter, dust, water, and slime.
Right.
That kind of tossed it up a little bit.
Yeah, so the first one I guess we could talk about is this one that was David Richards, which was like in the key of G major. This was I think one of my favorites because so much of the background exploded, and yet they were able to pretty much keep the musical notes intact during the explosion. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
Right. And that's this one right here.
Oh, yeah.
These guys, I don't know, Andrew, you like them. You think that they have a long potential to be on the show for a while.
Yeah, I think they're going to go a long way. I just feel like they bring a lot of different things to the table, and this was a good build. I was glad that they were able to make it into the top 2. They were one of my favorite builds from last week on this team. So, yeah. The only thing in general I had to note about this is I was expecting a little bit more from the different types of explosion, like water and slime, and they kind of all felt the same a little bit to me.
They stepped it up from last season where it was just planet.
It was
like dropping,
baseball bat, and then explosion.
Yeah, and they decided. I think it was good that they committed to all explosions, but I was hoping to see a little bit, like with the water explosion, I was hoping for a little bit more water, but you know, it's probably hard to do with little tiny explosions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, back to this build. This is great. You know, the storytelling was good, and I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the backstory of this team, how they came together with this guy I think it was the guy in Chicago who made this piece of art, and then they connected over it in the activism community. It was nice to hear their story.
Yeah, and this is how it exploded. Let's see if I can pull that up. Here we go. Yeah, this was the explosion, which was pretty great.
Yeah.
Like you look at...
Was that dust?
It was like the dust or the glitter or the slime.
It was the dust. Yeah, I think they did dust.
I mean, yeah, like that's kind of what they're looking for on a challenge like this is how much of it can you get to explode with the minifigure standing and a couple things still standing. Like all these musical notes just stayed right where they were, which is kind of incredible.
Oh yeah, this is great. That building went flying.
Thrawn, what do you say just about the team in general in this build? Like,
yeah, I think they did really well. I especially liked how the design for the factory was kind of done in like pieces. You could see that like each wall isn't really strongly connected. They kind of did like a house of cards kind of design, which was very clever. It made it really breakable, which was very beneficial for them. I didn't like how some of the notes came off. I think they should have connected them a little stronger, and it would have had a better impact maybe. Because they like specifically talked about, oh, we wanted the notes to, you know, still be there, but then they lost like a couple, which is all right. I guess that happens, but I think they could have done maybe a better job structurally on connecting them.
Right.
But other than that, it was great. Yeah, their story is very interesting. as we just said on the last episode, the one guy, Dave, he's the like main builder. He's the one who's like well known in the community.
Yeah.
And the other guy they met through like mutual interest. So I think it's more of like one knowing the technical know-how and the other one just bringing like an artistic expression to it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, now next up we had Michelle and Natalie's Intergalactic Pick Me Up. This was the one where it was like a intergalactic coffee store or something, and basically they were all realizing that it was all decaf, and so they blow up the coffee store. I guess, does anyone want to start first on this design at all? Because I personally, I thought like, I liked the inclusion of the giant coffee mug, this like warehouse with tubes going into it. It was definitely
I remember the
pretty cool.
explosion was cool.
Yeah.
The explosion was cool. I like how they did a backdrop against it to really like, you know, help bring it to life, I think. You didn't pick up much of the background, but I like that they put like a wall behind it.
Yeah.
That it kind of helped.
And the tubing stuff in the center, like whatever's going on over there.
I remember they also had like some brown bits come out of the coffee, which was a nice touch that I appreciated.
Right. What do you think before we get to the explosion throw on just like the build in general or like kind of the storytelling?
Story was really good. I feel the build was a little everywhere.
Right.
It was too colorful and bright based off of like the theming that they were going with.
Right.
But other than that, I enjoyed it. I think they used, I think it was bricks on the inside. Would have been maybe better if they had done like studs for the coffee mug and then bricks for the building itself. Like
Yeah,
pieces
that's
of
true.
the building breaking and then the coffee looking more fluid, giving that round shape. A lot of minifigs fell over,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't get docked anything for that, because
Well,
it's like most of the people you were trying to save, you ended up having this injury.
Right. I thought from what I remember, it's like the main minifigures can't fall off, but if the others do, it's like okay. I think was like the rule.
It didn't seem like that was like a thing where they like. I know there was one team that didn't get in the bottom two, and they had a good build. We'll talk about them, I guess, but it didn't seem like the minifigs falling over were exactly the big thing they were looking for. It was like more of the explosion.
Right.
I think.
Let's look at the explosion then, because this was right. This is it. So I mean, pretty intense. Like literally, there's bricks, like studs flying everywhere. You know, a handful of minifigs were down for the count. But I think if you look at the right of the image, like the coffee like mug or coffee like cup,
it looks like it's spilling.
like
open.
spilling open is pretty hard to pull off.
Are they filling? Are they like sort of filling loose pieces?
Yeah, so like what they're doing is they're filling loose studs in like little tiny like 1x1 bricks.
Is that happening in the center too? Is that what all that?
Yeah, it's all loose bricks that they're just putting in with like colors.
That's
Right.
the move. I feel like every team that does that usually has a good explosion because it's just pieces flying
Right.
everywhere. There were some teams that like didn't really have that, and it like it just those explosions are
Those
way weaker.
little things are like the stuff that the like professionals are looking for, like Jamie and Amy. They're like specifically looking for this stuff.
It both helps you, but also can hurt you if your explosion is too cluttered. I feel like you don't see the deconstruction as much because there's just like stuff shooting at the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Now who do we have next? Oh yeah, Cabaret Getaway. This was the married couple, right?
Yep.
Yeah. This one. Let's pull it up. So this was, Cabaret Getaway. They put in, it's like, I don't know, one of them's like an opera singer or something, right? And she was like, cabaret singer. And she's like, let's implement that into our build. And one of the things...
I thought they got a cabaret singer. That's why they did it.
Oh.
Yeah, their minifig was a cabaret singer.
The minifig was the cabaret singer.
Yeah.
And basically, they kind of took it to the next level. I'd say the build itself is pretty attractive. The buildings, they made good use of the like foreground of like making sure that they got trees. They have that fountain. They have like the walkway up. Overall, like especially given the fact that they were in the bottom two last episode, right? So they like managed to really pull it together for this one.
Yeah,
build.
I feel like this is actually one of the best builds that incorporates all of the space. Like I really like what they did with the plaza and the fountain. Obviously buildings are, probably pretty straightforward for people at this level, but I think they did a great job.
Yeah, the symmetry is totally there, and like it looks like they really planned it out. and also gave it some scale in the back.
Yeah, because some of the builds didn't have the same kind of scale.
Yeah,
I felt
or
maybe
organization.
Small. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
That's the other
lights.
thing is that like you kind of like this doesn't feel too like fantasy-esque, I guess, which wasn't really the goal, but that's sort of the direction that most people went in.
Yeah, a lot of people went like fantastical.
Yeah.
What do you think, Thrawn, of the?
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely limited by the minifig that they got, because I think one of the challenges was not only does it have to explode well, but it also has to fit the minifig that you got as like your base theming.
Right.
I think with a cabaret theme, I think they did a really good job with the limitations they had, especially with the like directional explosion that they managed to pull off was really good. Like the front stayed, the front stayed pretty good. And then it was more upwards instead of forward, which I thought was really clever because they wanted that like fountain kind of design. Right. I think where they didn't do as well is the fountain that they talked about, I felt wasn't big enough. I think they should have gone for like a really big fountain and had it blow upwards and focused more on the fountain and less on the building.
They had water, right? That was their element.
They had, theirs was water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. The fountain didn't really feel like the center of attention, even though they were talking about it.
All right, let's look at the next team. We have Caleb and Jacob. These are the two, they're brothers, right? Yeah.
Twins, right?
They're twins,
Something like that.
So they had the Rocket Boy defends the moon, which I like anything space or UFO related, so I guess you could argue maybe there was a little bit of dead space with like...
Yeah, it's a little barren.
A little barren.
But the concept is there, which again, with the space theming, I think it was good. I think if they went maybe for like an alien planet sort of vibe, that might have been easier. Or like that would have been more visually appealing.
Right.
But their background's really good. The Earth, that like Earth look is really well done.
What they're missing is a rover, a little rover.
A little rover is something.
Little rover.
Yeah.
Some fake steps planted in, or like the landing craft left over would have been really clever.
Yeah.
But I will say their explosion was honestly, I was surprised they didn't make it into the top 2. I thought this was going to be a contender, but I think it kind of is that, was some of the storytelling and the barren foreground that maybe didn't.
Pretty wild. They had glitter though, and so glitter definitely helps just look cool. The left saucer and the right saucer explode, but the minifig stayed. It looks pretty great. Odd21 says, I want to know how they exploded them. So my idea is, and this is the thing in like Hollywood, is like there's these devices called squibs, which are these tiny little like pretty safe, like even like they'll put them on humans that explode with blood, but you could put anything in there. You could put glitter, you could put like all sorts of things. It could be compressed air, but knowing that it's Fox and like they shoot all sorts of shows with like people getting shot or like stabbed, and they always use squibs a lot of the time. So I feel like that would also those things are so tiny you can hide them in Lego pretty well.
I would like to it would be cool if like in the next season they did like where the contestants like picked where the squibs went, or like they picked like they didn't even have to call it squib or say what is making it explode, but like the explosion points, because I feel like if they get to choose those, which I think they are, they're just not showing it in the show, but if they get to choose those points and we can see, that could be something that happens in the review where it's like, oh, maybe you should have put it over here so this would have happened, or like, oh, you picked a perfect spot for it. Because like I was just confused the whole time, because I was like, how do they know where it's going to explode from? Because that's so important. And like I feel like the there was a couple that I feel like got kind of screwed over by like where it was placed. Like if it was maybe placed in a different spot, like it would have been a better explosion,
Yeah. All right, so this next one is Moto Imparis. This is the break and the rainbow aftermath. I guess Thrawn, do you want to start talking about this one?
Yeah, that one was really, really cool. I like the dam concept turned out really well. I also like that the underground of the dam, they had, I think, parts that like Lego does this a lot of like the breaking aspect. You can like see in the building there's like cracks and stuff, and then they incorporated the cracking into the explosion, which was very directional. again, a little bit bland in the center between the area of the dam
Right.
and the like wildlife, but they tried to like spice it up a little bit with like some colors. There's some water, there's some rocks, some plant life a little.
Yeah. Are these
It's
guys the engineers?
Yeah.
Right?
yeah,
They were
I think
two
these were
engineers.
the science
So
the scientists.
This was
engineers.
definitely out of their wheelhouse. Yeah, scientists. This
Yeah,
is definitely
I
out of
think
their wheelhouse.
yeah, they got an unusual minifig to work with.
Right.
So I can definitely see where like, oh, you know, you get something fantasy elemented, but you're an engineer. You're like, where do I go with this?
Let's look at the explosion because
I was hoping for some kind of like
Oh,
water
yeah.
pieces to kind of flow through after. It's still probably very difficult to do.
because
but
they
I
got the dust. They didn't get the
Yeah,
water.
I think they got dust.
that
They could have
explosion
put
is pretty
some. They could have put some blue stuff in the
Right.
bottom, or like had a system where like it would have blown out the door at the bottom and then put like a bunch of blue studs that were like translucent, and that could have
Mhm.
looked like water.
Right.
Yeah, I would have.
But I'm assuming they spent a lot of time on the design of the
Yeah.
dam itself and less on
And
the
they did-
intricacies under.
They did I think instead of that, they did like it was her rainbow powers, and so they did a bunch of I think it was like 1 by 1 pieces of all different colors that I don't
Yeah.
think we have in this photo, but like those all came out.
Probably some of their limitations was the fact that they had to have the bottom very structurally sound, so they probably didn't have the space to put the little
Right.
packets in there.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to keep in mind when building is like you need space for where you're going to put it, or else you're going to screw yourself over later, which is, you know, a struggle of building.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. All right, who do we have next? I think it's Susan and Jen.
Spider.
Yeah, the moms. Let me pull that one up. The two mothers. That's with the spider. Yeah.
They did much better this time,
Right?
than the
Like-
previous one. They did a much better job.
And they
I was honestly thinking they would be the first ones to go, but good on them for managing to like, yeah, bring that up. And especially like I like the concept of it, like the wizarding library. I'd say my only complaint was that they should have made the library aspect more structurally sound, because I felt that exploded too, which kind of felt like it went against the story of like, oh, there's a spider in my library, let me fix it. Well, you blew up half your library, so
Yeah, I think like they were very smart in understanding that time management was going to be key here, because last time that's kind of where they struggled with the movement in the wheel on their float. So this time around, I feel like they definitely delivered on a better like story overall, and just I think the like kind of uniqueness of this spider is great. I also love like giant spiders and everything. So
yeah, definitely.
let's see the explosion. I remember really liking the explosion.
Yeah,
they had
that's
glitter,
great.
right?
I think they had glitter. That's why, and the wizard one, so that kind of worked well.
Yeah, I feel like if you got glitter, it's gonna be a cool explosion no matter what. I mean,
They
that's
had some
pretty
good
great.
color choices, like the color palette of like the walls in the back.
Yeah, and the base too. I like the pattern that they used. in the
Yeah, it
base.
has the theme
Yeah,
of like.
my own-
They focused more of like texturing the base and less of putting stuff on the base.
Right.
My only critique was it felt a little small in scale compared to some
Yep.
of the other builds, but
Yeah,
you could tell that they were probably really careful with their time and were like, let's not do anything too ambitious.
Which is also why I think they went for detailing the base and less stuff on the base, is
Right.
because they wanted to manage it as best they could.
Yeah.
Which I think played with their strengths, definitely.
a bigger spider would have been cool too.
A bigger spider.
Always.
Yeah,
They didn't have enough
I feel like
time.
that's a big thing. Is like people who can make like the really big characters, like Frog, like the Frog.
Yeah, let's go ahead
'Cause
and look at
that's,
that
like-
one. This was Lauren
That
and
shows some
Brian's,
master skill, you know.
and I mean the frog itself looked great. They won, right? They
Yeah,
were the
they
top
won.
team.
Yeah, they were the winners.
I mean, the story, everything
That's
was just
fun.
like firing off here. The story, like even the judges were saying, like it looks like it's in its critical moment, like the ladybug's about to get eaten by this frog. And I love the I forget what I don't even know what they're called, the corn dog swamp plants. Yeah, cattails. There you go. That was a
Cattails.
really nice touch. Like it just everything really worked here.
The lily pads. They tried to fill up as much of the space as they could on the bottom too, but without like cluttering it. You know, because the main focus is the frog,
The frog and
especially
the
when it comes to
flower
the
and the bomb.
explosions.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
it's minimalistic, but it doesn't feel empty, which I think is something they pulled off really well. It's like it feels natural, especially the cattails. I think the cattails really put it together, because like if you remove the cattails, then it would feel super empty.
Right.
And there's just a bunch of space that they're just not using. But adding the like spaces in between the cattails and then the space for the frog to be like front and center, I think is like really good artistic design.
So this was the explosion. The explosion was wild.
The explosion was great.
It was like perfect.
It looked like it mainly started with the head. And I was like, wow, that's a little violent, don't you think?
It's Lego.
I prefer these types of builds, just like my own personal taste of something to look at and enjoy is like something that's like simplistic but really like awe-inspiring because it's just so big and like is telling a story.
And when it comes to the challenge, you know, they succeeded.
The tongue was great. I feel like the pieces of the tongue just flying off. So cool.
Oh yeah, I like the tongue especially because they were using leg pieces. They were like minifig legs as
really?
undulation for the tongue, which is very clever.
That's awesome. It's a great idea.
That's really good to see too, is when you know, the big parts that stand out, especially to people who aren't even big Lego builders, is when you notice these things that no one would normally think about using in their builds, and yet it like works out, and it's kind of like
totally.
innovative.
And I think oh my gosh, oh yeah, I was not super impressed with their build from the first week, so I was like not, I mean, they're all amazing Lego builders, let me just get that out of the way, but I was like not really sure what they were capable of, but then this week I felt like I was like, okay, these guys are contenders, like, you know, they're team to watch out for.
Yeah,
cool. And so the next guys up were, who was it? Randall and Sarita. This is the Bonita Applebomb, which is great, like a reference to the Tribe Called Quest song. Now, I think they did a good job at filling out the foreground. I think they definitely had some struggling here, if I remember correctly, with like the wall, because originally they built it solid, but Randall was like, if we need this to explode, there needs to be holes in it to allow it to fall apart.
Yeah, I think they struggled with, they were not really into the minifig that they got. I just didn't play to their strengths, and so I think there's a little bit of a struggle there. I was not super impressed with the build, but you know, I think they did well.
What was it, like a witch or something?
It's like an
it was like a witch.
I wish the witch was bigger and like more centered. It looks like it's like a little bit to the right, which is kind of like just not satisfying.
They might have been thinking about the explosion.
The wall in the back, the color palette, it looks a little funky. You know, just the like yellow and brown don't go too well together.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they did a as good of a job this time as they did the previous.
I like
the wall was definitely a big issue.
Oh yeah.
The fact that they like forgot, oh wait, this has to blow up, and if it's
here's
full
the
bricks, it's not gonna blow up, or it's not gonna blow up well.
Yeah, this was the explosion.
And the wall still kind of stayed fairly
together.
Like,
yeah.
I get the direction they were going for the wall, because like you can see that it's bending. The wall has a bend in it, which you do with like the round bricks. You'd use them as like a bending point, but because it's stacked on top of each other so much and it's so long, it didn't give any seams, so it just came off as like two separate pieces.
Yeah,
right.
I think if
that might have been better if they had made those gates.
Right.
If those were like giant gates for like a door, then it would have worked really well for them, as like them blowing the door open and the witch getting out of the way from the door. But the fact that they made it a wall and the doorway really tiny, and the color choice as well for the castle didn't really work well for them.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. All right, let's move on to the next ones. These were our unfortunate losers of the evening, was Jack and Don's Opal and the Jewel Thief. Now, I will say that I think they started out, I think it was Amy, like one of the Lego Masters said, like the actual set of the like walkway and the buildings like is cool. It looks like a movie set. It looks like a set, you know, you would expect to see maybe even like on shelves. But when it comes to the foreground and like the whole front area, there's just nothing there. And that's where they kind of like, I think, fell apart with this build.
It's very barren,
too bad.
Which kind of sucks. The build for the like actual jewelers I thought was really good.
Yeah.
But again, it's the thinking of it having to blow up, right? They built it too strong.
Yeah.
The front was way too strong, and so I still liked how it exploded. It felt a little bit realistic to me, but they definitely lost most of their points in the fact that it's the distance in between the jewelers and the minifig is just road, and it's not good road,
No.
right? So you easily could have made the road smaller, put the jeweler more farther forward. Maybe if they put like a giant jewel on top of the jewelers,
That's
like
what
a big fake
yeah.
diamond,
Yeah.
that would have been really cool.
I think
But-
that's where they kind of messed up, was their story decision. Because if they had a jewel thief, like the first thing that would have come to my head would be like a giant jewel, and like then
Yeah,
like,
giant jewel. You
almost
blow
like
up a giant jewel.
you could
No one
almost
else
do
gets
that
it.
thing from like Aladdin, where it's like a lot of like kind of like
Sporadically spread out.
like spread out, like old like gold and all this random stuff, and then
Well,
a
why
giant
are
jewel.
we on Lego Masters,
Yeah, right?
guys?
But,
We
like,
should be on Lego Masters.
I think that just shows why maybe they were the weakest ones, and they had like, because they were probably playing to their strengths with this decision.
Yeah.
And that just shows that they're not on that level, because they decided to go with like a really basic kind of city street look rather
they're
than
good
like
at,
something
you know,
really,
but-
which
Well,
is
like a
yeah,
big-
it looks great, but like
A big safe would have also been really good. Like, just build a giant safe, have the door like blast open. There'd be a bunch of jewels and like gold shoot out of the safe.
yeah,
Or some
totally.
more
Yeah, if you're gonna
characters.
compromise on the foreground and have it really empty, I was expecting them to go taller.
Yeah,
on
this
the
was
back
the
at least, and like a
explosion.
safe on top would have been so cool.
The explosion was all right. It's just, yeah, it's such a strong structure that didn't blow up as well as they wanted.
Yeah.
The jewelry sign falling down was kind of cool, but you didn't even know if that's exactly what they planned.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah,
literally,
it's hard to know.
all of these explosions look cool. You know, it's hard to make, Lego exploding not look good. Let's see, who's next? Oh yeah, Mark and Steven, that's the
brothers that kind of look similar. Are they
yeah,
twins?
not the twin brothers, right?
This is the one where the character like fell off. during
Oh
the
yes,
explosion,
this
right?
is.
No, these were
let me
the
pull
twins,
it
I
up.
think, yeah.
Watermelon Madness, Mark and Steven. Let me pull it up.
Which I was wondering about is like, is there anything you can do to make sure it stays in place more?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
here
could
it
have
is.
put like connections around it.
Didn't they do
like-
that too? Like,
A little bit behind, but it wasn't.
Right.
You could see there's like a little structure behind it, but it wasn't enough. I think the force just knocked it forward, which
because
kinda
other
sucks.
people's had like it not happen to them, but they didn't even have anything like around it to keep
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
in place.
The big issue with their little minifig is that like the head mold is really front heavy, and then on top of that they have the arm stretching out with like a walkie-talkie, so it's like a lot of forward weight that just ended
Yeah.
up being against them. I felt it was actually kind of clever.
No, I thought
because
yeah.
the way the pumpkin blew up,
It's
you could
really
still-
clever.
eye winking, but the guy falls over. I felt that actually
No, yeah.
enforced.
In a
their
second
story
we'll
more.
in a second we'll look at the explosion, but just looking at this, like, so what? I guess like they get docked some points, but I think like this, it looks amazing.
Yeah, the design
Like
is super
the
cool.
watermelons, the almost like other little pumpkin or vegetables that are in the ground with their little eyes popping
Fruits and
out.
veggies,
Like
yeah.
it's really well layered. Like
What's
I
that
learned
in
this.
the back left? Is that like a water tower or something?
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
a water tower.
like a silo.
Yeah, with being taken
Yeah.
over with like the roots. I mean, this is like because like Thrawn, when you and I were in BritCon, we like learned how hard it is really to layer greenery, and like this is like
It's a lot of work.
It reminds me of Plants vs Zombies.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
little Plants
bit.
vs
Yeah,
Zombies.
I kind of see it.
I even love like the red barn in the back and the water tower. I mean, it's a solid build, like
Yeah,
for
and
these
sure.
hard to
guys
make
on the
spheres
left. Berries.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, little member berries looking guys.
Yeah, member berries.
Let's look
Wow,
at the
the explosion.
explosion.
Damn.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's check this.
You can tell why, like, even though their minifig was, I think it was the only minifig that fell over, or one of the
It was the
only
only
two.
It was the only
You can
one.
tell that, like, I think that their build made up for that fact, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, this is the explosion.
It's like,
So, I mean,
did anybody
wild.
end up in the bottom two for their?
No, I don't
figurine
think
form?
so. It was because the explosions weren't, like, wasn't big enough,
Gotcha.
or didn't fully break the things that, you know.
I mean,
they
yeah,
needed to
look
break.
at that. I mean, that's like incredible the way they got this to explode. Yeah, whatever, the minifigure fell over, but I mean, look at how much movement they were able to get
Yeah.
going off
And
of this.
was it on purpose to have like the watermelon end up just like a piece of watermelon?
I don't think
Yes.
so, but
Yeah,
oh,
they-
it was,
I think they
okay.
said that
So
was.
they built it in a way that it's got like a cross section. There's like a big theme in
right.
the way they built it, and that's where they put like the explosion on the inside, and that's why they also filled it up with like red on the inside as well. So they wanted to slice it in half, kind of like a fruit ninja.
That's really
Yeah.
really cool.
And I love that you can still see some of the eye, like really just brings it to life. Of like I could imagine that being in a movie where it's like
It
the
looks
villain,
nuts.
like you see get destroyed, but like part of the face is still there. It's cool.
But to have something be like change after the explosion that plays into the story somewhat is like
so hard to do.
Is a really cool way to step it up. The guy, the father son who ended up in the bottom two, they
did a similar concept, but
Yeah,
it just ended up not
it
working.
didn't work, which was a bummer because I thought that would have been really
Which was
fun.
this
Yeah.
one, right? Let's pull it up. This was
The POW.
Tim and Zach.
World
Which
domination.
I mean, I like their like chemistry as father and son. They're very funny. Like Will Arnett was like kind of poking fun at him. I liked what does the dad do? Dad dabs.
He dabs.
I feel like dab is almost a little outdated though. Like dabbing in general is like 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
Here we go though. Yeah, world domination. I like the symmetry and I think like the idea there is great. The building looks okay.
The color palette is a little like the pink is
It's a little
supposed to
bit-
stand out, but it almost
Yeah,
like
it kind of clashes.
clashes with the green a little bit.
Yeah, I think I was a little underwhelmed by the scale of it all, to be honest. Felt a little small.
Although
but I will say, I think this is one of the best uses of the slime. Like,
yeah.
Yes,
the containers
absolutely.
blowing up, like, really worked for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
look
other
at that,
thing
like,
is how lucky do they get, like probably a little bit with the explosions, because any little squib or explosive device is going to be a little different. You just kind of never know.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes
Yeah.
it's up to chance. Like this just happened to look so good. Like the color of the slime, like just how whatever the explosive device, wherever it was placed, like made this explosion like pretty great.
I think they also probably could have saved themselves the like POW if they had put two little strings, one string on one container and one string on another container. That would have just forced the front of the wall down. I don't know if they
Right.
had those pieces available, but
Yeah, that
I
was
did
my
see some people using them.
that was my question as well. It felt like if that was a real thing they weren't sure about, I mean, who knows how much time they had, but you would think that there's some things you could do to kind of ensure that like would happen, because it didn't even look
Yeah,
like there were any
were they-
explosive charges
On the
that
building at all.
Yeah.
They put it specifically in the slime, and I think maybe they just didn't think about it, or they thought, oh, the force is going to be
Right.
strong enough that it's just going to shake it and it's going to go down.
But yeah, it just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
All right. Then lastly, we have Zach and Wayne, the favorites of the whole show.
Were they in the
probably.
final two?
I
No,
don't
they
know.
didn't make it in
They
the top
didn't
two
make
this
it.
time.
But like,
Who
it's
were?
hard. There's
It
so
was,
many
The
people.
frog
The frog.
and the other two guys. What was it?
The Dave and
Oh yeah, the musical notes.
Oh,
The
yeah,
fact-
yeah. Oh, okay.
Here it is. Is this it?
Which I honestly agree with. Although I will say, I mean, when Zach pulls up this build, this was a great build.
Yeah,
but-
I would.
very good.
I
build.
think
yeah.
I would choose this one over
Yeah,
the
really?
other one. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Let's transition.
the place
Yeah.
where they ended, the
Captain
reason they ended up
Blastra.
not being as far is because the story
Mhm.
was not as interesting, and you can
Yeah.
see from their building the main focus was the spaceship and the giant alien. The base is very, very plain, which I was kind of surprised by.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's kind of like what you would expect to get if you got that minifig and like the story they're telling. Well, I will say the violin, the violin is like, where do you go from that? That's a very challenging minifig. So I would give it to them in points there of like being able to make a story with a violinist is not easy.
That's
yeah.
true. That's true.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I agree. This should have like easily number
It
like in
looks
the top
great.
3. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
what they're doing is
I didn't really
nuts.
notice that how bare the base was.
Yeah.
But he's
yeah,
like
that's
taking
pretty
down
bare.
a spaceship with it. Like the monster has all these tentacles are coming in and out of the ground,
But
almost
that's
like a
what I love
sandworm.
is the big characters, and like they have a cool thing with like architecture, like bending and like sort of weird.
Yeah, with the
shapes.
dragons they were able to
Because
do
yeah, they
that.
did it in the first one with the dragons, which was so cool. But I feel like that's
has
kind
a-
of
Continue.
that's just part of their like style. I feel like is that they
Yeah.
like really understand like the architecture and now can like go off and experiment with like really cool shapes and designs.
Right.
It has very similar vibes to the last year's. The winning team built a very similar thing where they had like a big tentacle monster.
Yeah.
And there was
Yeah.
like a robot coming down. It had a very similar kind of concept to that, which I thought was kind of like a nice nod. Because they also talked about that they was it them who fought against them and won in like a competition at like a con, or was
Yeah.
it the other team?
I think
no,
it was
yeah,
them.
I think it was them. They talked about it very briefly on the
them?
last episode.
No, I-
Oh, is it different?
It's
team?
either
was a
them or the
different team.
brothers.
I think
It's
it might
gonna
have been
be-
the
it's one of the
brothers.
two.
Yeah,
It was the
yeah.
brothers. Yeah. It was the
Okay.
the watermelon brothers. I'm sorry. I don't
Yeah, it was
remember
the
their
Watermelon
name.
Brothers.
The Watermelon Brothers.
Yeah.
They were like up
Okay,
against
they were the
them.
ones.
Where's the explosion? There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but their explosion was kind of like all from the inside out. It was like very even. Like the eyeballs are going everywhere. Like it looked pretty great.
And all their guys like stayed.
yeah, all their
yeah.
guys stayed down, which is like kind of a little bit of luck. It has to be, but pretty amazed. So I don't know. Do you guys agree with like the winners and losers this episode? I'd say probably all around the board. I pretty much agreed with everything everyone had to say.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I'd agree too, but definitely this last one we just looked at was up there for me. But
Definitely.
it could take number 3 because the music just, the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I got that like character, I'd be like, what the hell do I do with like a violin?
right?
Right.
In an action movie,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to make.
No.
Which is why I feel like that team. I'm like, we'll see how far they go, but I feel like they're gonna be that team that can get a hard challenge and really squeeze something out still. Because I forget the people who did the Centaur, like they didn't really know what to do, and I think their stories they suffered because of it. But it's like even if you don't maybe have knowledge of whatever this, a direct knowledge or like your skill set
Yeah,
lends to that, it's
Randall
gonna
and
be like
Sarita.
how can you like still get creative despite facing something that's kind of limiting?
No,
in,
it's
like, what you're
hard.
gonna
It's
do.
definitely hard. Like this episode specifically, getting minifigures and not knowing. Like Nitron just wrote in like they got a space fig and had to go with a coffee shop. Like these weird combinations that because every like Lego builder on this show has an idea in their head, and when you have to get at random assigned a figure or like an element, you kind of have to go with like a new direction. And those who like kind of stick with what they wanted to do in the first place tend to like fall by the wayside, I think.
Yeah,
You
I
really-
liked-
It's part of the challenge of like the concept of the title master builder is you need to be able to think on your feet and you need
Right.
to have the creative mindset of like, if I'm given something I'm not comfortable with, can I spin this into something that I have a strength in?
Mhm.
Or if it's a weakness, is there a way that I can counteract that with something that I already know?
Yeah, absolutely. I liked how they were like, okay, well, like let's go to our roots with like activism, like climate change, and music, and like they kind of incorporated that all into their build. And I like what Will had to say too when they were like, we don't know anything about centaurs, and I was like, well, they don't exist, so you can make up whatever you want. And it's like,
Yeah.
Yes
that's-
and no.
it was great. So I'm very excited. I don't know, are there any other builds we gotta talk about?
No, that's all of them.
I'm
that's
excited.
all of them, I
I'm
think.
excited for next week because
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
favorite episode of the last season was the weight challenge.
Yeah.
So I really
Yeah.
like the
And,
idea of
and my other
structural
favorite was the
challenge.
tall buildings. So this is
Yeah.
like both, where it's like they're building tall skyscrapers and buildings, but also having to fight against an earthquake.
Yeah.
Which is like
It's gonna be
So-
cool.
yeah, that's gonna
I'm
be-
excited to see what the engineers come up with. It could either
That's what I was
be,
thinking,
yeah, it could be they either like come out super strong and it's like plays to their strengths as engineers, or it's like they
Or
try to do something crazy and it
too
totally doesn't
intense.
work. But we'll see, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm excited now that we're starting to eliminate. It's like the episodes are so. We talked about this last week, but like, they have to like go through everything so quickly that we don't really get to like learn about the process and like the drama within the process. But now that we're starting to lose some teams, I feel like I'm excited to the stories, the builds. I think are gonna get a little bit better, and we're gonna like
I
really go
agree.
through the journey.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is pretty great. Anything you have to add? Or are you just excited for next week's?
I'm excited. I just really love like people who go big. I think
That's
the scale
true.
is really important, especially thinking back to last year. Like the winning team, like they made some huge builds and like went just bigger than some of the other teams. So I feel like at least that's what I keep an eye out for, is the people that are like going big and also like nailing a cool story. Is like that's who I think are contenders for the Master.
I agree. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. We've got 9 concurrent viewers. Thanks for checking this out. We'll be doing another one next Wednesday, a little later in the day. I believe we're going to get All Out Brick, maybe even Brother from Another Brick. Thrawn will be here, and maybe my roommates can join again. But until then, check me out on Instagram at @TheZachCap. Subscribe and click the notification bell to know when we go live next. Join into the discussion. Comment. Like, what did you guys think of this episode? Are you excited for the next episode? And check out Thrawn's Revenge on Instagram as well, ThrawnsTerminal on YouTube. And then Jcruraps, my roommate to my left, Jake, has a Instagram and a YouTube for Jcrew, which is like we work on music with them and do all sorts of videos. So check him out as well. I'll shout him out on my Instagram too. But if you're just tuning in now, go ahead, grab the cursor and start at the beginning of this live stream or refresh it as soon as I end this to watch from the beginning and see our opinions on this episode. It was a great episode. I think this live stream went very well. Thanks for being on, Thrawn.
Problem.
All right. And until next time, guys, stay bricking.
Lego